In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a very exciting pattern. We have colder air on the way from what we've been seeing, which should be obvious. It has been incredibly warm outside of the last couple of days here in the eastern states. We now have the National Weather Service more on board with a lesser extreme southeast ridge, as I've been pushing to you guys and saying for a few days now. Typically we just kind of analyze this stuff, walk through it, and talk about it, but that is something in particular that I disagreed about and I really was kind of pumping the brakes on. And yeah, it's kind of validating to see that kind of come into fruition, because it's just been pretty apparent on the models, in my opinion, and probably to you guys too, is from what you've seen. But we also have much more snowfall, I would say, on today's model runs. We have the European model, which does keep it a little bit further north. There is still a fair share for the Mid-Atlantic and Ohio Valley, but the GFS model just totally drops so much for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. We're going to see that later on as well. We're talking in terms of feet. This pattern has the potential to be one of the snowier patterns we have seen in very, very many years. So let's just talk about it. Let's first off take a look at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook here, which is going to be for the 13th through the 17th here of February. I also want to note that we do have the new weekly 3 to 4 week outlook from the National Weather Service that we're going to see in a moment. That just came out today. We do have colder air still expected during this time frame for the West Coast, but the heart of it looks to be over the central states and parts of the Midwest and Great Lakes here. Also the Northeast getting quite a bit as well. We do see the Southeast ridge is present, but on this outlook it is a little bit further suppressed to the south than previous outlooks. And we're going to see on the 8 to 14 day outlook in a moment that this is even lesser of a factor. But let's take a look at the precipitation real quickly. And look at this. I mean, all of these areas here are in the cold, and they're also in the highly above average precipitation in many cases. So you can kind of pick up on the fact that that combination there is going to lead to a lot of increased snowfall chances and snowfall activity overall for many of these areas, including the West as well. Look at this. I mean, that is the highest above average on the map here, and they have below average temperatures around here. So this is why we've been saying the Cascades, Rockies, Sierra Nevada are going to be getting tons of snowfall here very, very soon. And sure enough, these outlooks are really pointing in that direction. Let's take a look at the 8 to 14 day outlook, and this is going to be for the 15th through the 21st. What we see is that some of this colder air has kind of regressed up to the north. We do see some warmer to near normal conditions for the Southwest, and this will be kind of a neutral PNA. You've heard us say PNA a lot if you keep up with our videos, but essentially warmer temperatures in this area is called a positive PNA, and it encourages colder air into the east. And a negative PNA would be colder temperatures in this area, which encourages the warmth to move into the east. Now, when you get a neutral PNA, it's a lot better than a negative PNA for cold in the east, and we see that working out quite well here. We see lots of cold air expected for the central and eastern states during this time frame. Just what we've been pushing for, I would say, since the beginning of February now. Obviously, in late January, we kind of had some inklings that there would be some warmer temperatures in February, which we did get, but we did expect it to last a little bit longer. We've suddenly seen the models and basically all data available to us just turn around on their opinion and really show the cold making a comeback, and this is the result of that right here. 15th through 21st looking very cool throughout the central and eastern states, unless you're very far to the south here, where things might remain a little bit warmer. So hardly a southeast ridge here, very, very secluded to the south. Just kind of a warmer immediate Gulf Coast for the most part, and southeast coast there. The precipitation equally impressive on this map as well. So again, you're coupling this with below average temperatures for most of these areas, and this is going to be a great look for potential snowfall in the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, even for parts of the Southeast perhaps. And you know, the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, there will be chances. Great Lakes, Upper Midwest, even the Northwest here still flourishing as far as precipitation. So overall snowier for many different parts of the nation. And as we discussed, the 3 to 4 week outlook here is the new one. And what we see for the February 22nd through March 7th time frame, so the very end of February into early March, is likely, again, a warmer southwest at least. Equal chances up here to the north, but could be warmer, could be colder. And it looks very similar to that previous 8 to 14 day outlook we just saw, with a lot of the cold being for the Midwest, Northern Plains, Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast here. This is going to be an excellent look. And oftentimes during this 3 to 4 week outlook, this is a pretty long outlook. And what we're going to see is, again, oftentimes likely the cold getting a little further south than this. Oftentimes the warmth getting a little further north than this. But this is just the average during the 22nd through 7th, which is a pretty long term outlook, obviously. The precipitation going to look pretty decent on this one as well, where we get a lot of this wet conditions kind of matching up with the cold. So very well, we could extend this pretty wintry look into early March. That could be the case here. So it's going to be something we have to watch. And the Northwest here also looking to really succeed in getting these ski resorts some much needed snowfall in the Northern Rockies and Cascades. I think for the mountainous Northwest especially, but really the mountainous West in general, this is going to be an epic second half to the skiing season, if I had to say so myself. I mean, with all of the outlook showing the Cascades and Northern Rockies getting above average snowfall, below average temperatures, above average precipitation equals above average snowfall for these areas, that is going to accumulate a ton, and it is going to accumulate frequently. And it's just going to add up to a whole lot over the course of the next, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks here coming up soon. And then again, in the East, I mean, this could be, week 3 or 4 that looks pretty wintry by this point. So definitely something to be excited about if you're hoping for cold and snow. Let's take a look here at the past 7 days. And like I mentioned earlier, I mean, we've had a warmer start to February overall. If you exclude the last couple of days, I mean, we've had this kind of warmer look here. Neutral PNA with some of the northern areas colder, southern areas warmer. Kind of hard to differentiate if this is more of a positive or negative, so we'll call it a neutral PNA. Now let's go ahead and take a look here at your European model. And again, there will be some differences on both of these models, but both show plenty of cold and both show a whole lot of snowfall. The biggest difference is going to be for these more middle areas, where your GFS model, the one that we look at in a moment after this European model, is going to show a lot more in this area. The European model shows less, but there is still snowfall for a lot of these spots. So it's not between no snow and some snow. It's more between some snow and a lot of snow is the bigger question here between these two models. Let's move towards tomorrow. It's a little bit later. This video is coming out today, so we'll just focus in starting tomorrow, Saturday on the 8th. We do have a low here over Kentucky, kind of near Indiana and Ohio as well. And we do see some wintry weather here starting out for the Mid-Atlantic. And this is mostly coming in the form of ice. There is some snowfall in the northern extent of this. We also have some snowfall up to the north as well for upper Midwest areas, Great Lakes areas here over top of that low. It's important to note that this area here is on the warm front side of things, and typically that can lead to a lot more mixing and complications. That's not the best for accumulating snowfall, at least not at this moment. So definitely worth noting there. Some thunderstorms and showers underneath can definitely be anticipated. As we keep going, though, we see this low moves towards the Mid-Atlantic, and eventually, this is an interesting point because we have the low pressure here, but a lot of this energy is transferring offshore, and likely most of your low pressure is here by this point. We end up with a pretty major Northeast and New England in general snowfall event. I mean, this is a pretty substantial one between Saturday and Sunday, the 8th and the 9th. So just about 24 to 36 hours from now, we'll be looking at basically this. Very heavy snowfall up there in the New York and New England areas. Even Long Island and New York City likely to see some heavier snowfall, but we can tell they are right on the brink of mixing or being all snow. It's very, very close call for those areas. We have had some model guidance showing these southern areas getting the most, but mixing could be an issue. It's going to be a tough call. Definitely going to be a nowcast type situation when you're that close to the mixing line that's being predicted. Pretty complicated. Once we move offshore, we see that a lot of areas like Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts are going to be in the heart of it. We also see southern New Hampshire, southern Vermont likely seeing high amounts as well. And then that eventually moves out by Sunday afternoon. Now, as we move past the Sunday afternoon time frame, because there's not really a whole lot happening, some snow showers in the northwest, snow showers in the northeast, and then maybe some thunderstorms or showers in the deep south and southeast, but nothing major, as you can tell on screen here. I want to take us straight towards Monday here on the 10th, and what we're seeing is a low trying to form between New Mexico and Colorado here. We get some rising thunderstorms out to the east of this, which is a pretty common thing there. Some snowfall off to the north, but everything's kind of spread out as this low is weaker. It'll come together if it strengthens here. So let's see what occurs. And yeah, it kind of all comes together here. No heart of the low. We're not really seeing a strong low pressure system with this one, but by Tuesday morning on the 11th, we can see there's some wintry weather up here for parts of the plains, Midwest, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic area. Lots of thunderstorms and heavy showers underneath, starting with Texas and Oklahoma all the way eastward to the southeast coast. Even wintry weather here for states like Ohio, West Virginia, and Virginia. So pretty far south here for Tuesday the 11th. And what we see by the time we're reaching about 7 p.m. on the 11th is that we get areas like D.C., Maryland, Delaware, southeastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey getting some pretty heavy snowfall, moderate to heavy here, which could end up accumulating. Thunderstorms and showers, like I mentioned, underneath all of this activity going to be pretty likely. And as we reach towards Wednesday, we see that one kind of comes to an end, but immediately we get a low kind of moving in right here to the deep south. We get snowfall again for the plains and Midwest, and it looks like we're going to start things all over again. Still keeping some moisture and precipitation over the mid-Atlantic areas even into Wednesday. There's just a lot of broad low pressure throughout here. I mean, the heart of it is here, but there's some lower pressure over here, some lower pressure here. It's enough to kind of keep this train of precipitation going by Wednesday the 12th. And as we move towards, this is about 1 a.m. on Thursday, February 13th. We see this low is more of a cutter as of now on the models, or at least this model, Thursday morning on the 13th. We get more of a kind of Midwest, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes snowfall event. The Northeast here does get some snowfall as well, but for the Mid-Atlantic and Southern Ohio Valley areas in here, mostly rain or ice occurring on this one because it takes this more inland track. For the Mid-Atlantic to get major snowfall, you would need this system to move, maybe not that far around, but you would need to see it move around the area here. You would want to be on the west side as opposed to the east side or having the low over you, so it cuts in. That creates some disruptions. We do have a major storm system moving towards the northwest, bringing rain and snowfall respectively to different elevations out there in the west. So one of our first major storms there on this model run, starting out on Thursday. Here's by the time we're reaching Thursday afternoon, and we do see this low eventually moves offshore 998 nearby Boston, and we do end up with some mid-Atlantic snowfall. The Northeast really flourishes here, especially the interior Northeast, like the Adirondacks, northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and then a lot of Maine. Maybe not so much southern New England. So that's going to be a little bit of a different storm than our previous two before this point. But we do get some back-end snowfall starting out for Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, western Pennsylvania for Thursday afternoon. Thunderstorms and showers along this cold front underneath. So we get kind of like these multi-factor storms. Really interesting. The storminess by the time we're reaching Thursday afternoon is going to be really, really expanding out west. I mean, look at this. We're seeing California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, all seeing snowfall already with two low pressure systems along the west coast there. Very, very intense looking by Thursday. And by the time we reach Friday here on the 14th, we're quieter in the east here. So again, pretty quiet, mostly just some cold in some areas. Pretty close to normal temperatures, actually. It's out west where all of the action is by Friday the 14th. We have a low here, a stronger one down in Colorado. And we're seeing tons of mountainous snowfall, tons of lower elevation rainfall, just overall action-packed out west for Friday on the 14th. By the time we're reaching just that evening, we see this low move from Colorado over to Kansas. It's a 990. That's a really strong low pressure system. We're seeing the Dakotas, Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin into Michigan, seeing snowfall from this one. And we're getting some thunderstorms sparking up here from the Gulf underneath this low, which is, again, a very common thing to happen here. As we take it towards Saturday afternoon on the 15th is a quick mover. We see a 996 over Illinois now. Snowfall for Wisconsin and Michigan still, but also for the Northeast on the eastern end of things. We're getting another snowfall event here by the 15th. We're still within 10 days, and this is probably the fourth or fifth snow event that we're seeing for these areas. I mean, that is truly incredible, and it's hard to get any more action than that. I mean, this is just the most action-packed pattern I feel like I've seen in forever. We see tons of rainfall underneath too, so lots of moisture being just drawn in from the Gulf. We are seeing lots of thunderstorms probably for many areas in here as well. Very, very action-packed, like I mentioned. By Sunday afternoon, we see this is that major system we've been pointing out that happens on most of these models sometime between the 15th and 17th, 968. So the models continue to show a very extreme low around this time frame. Heavy snowfall widespread throughout areas of Canada, the Great Lakes, the Mid-Atlantic, a little lighter for the Ohio Valley, but still a lot of snowfall nevertheless. And it is very windy in a lot of these areas as well. So potentially blizzard conditions, especially in these heavier pockets with this, but probably more so closer to the low like that, even to the north here. Very, very heavy snowfall combined with wind does create those whiteout and basically blizzard conditions. Very strong cold front stretching underneath, so we're getting a lot of cold air pulled in right around this 16th time frame. And likely, I'll move us back a couple of hours, but likely thunderstorms once again happening on the very forefront of that cold front moving through for areas of the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast there. Very intense look. As we head overnight, we see that a lot of the Northeast switches back to snowfall as this low is now over Maine by about 7 p.m. on Sunday. 961, very intense. Heavy snowfall continues to be a trend here for these areas. I mean, this is just going to be a crazy thing to track. We're pretty far out. I mean, we're close to 10 days out from this system, about 9 days, if we're going to be exact. And yeah, very, very interesting. We've seen this like 3 or 4 days in a row, at least a low into the 970s, if not 960s, which for those of you that don't know, is very, very intense, especially for this time of year. You know, we oftentimes see hurricanes drop to that low of pressure, but for these winter storms, that is on the very high end. Now, as we keep going towards Monday afternoon, there's still some residual snow showers left over for a lot of these areas, but the main pocket of snowfall is done. The jet stream is really, really rip-roaring a trough moving into the east by this point. A big ridge here over the west. Just overall, a really nice look. We do see storms abundant over the northwest here. The Rockies, a lot of snowfall. So the storminess kind of continues there. Tuesday on the 18th, it looks like we're getting our next storm, getting its act together around Colorado, Kansas. Again, that's kind of a, like January, the theme was this western Gulf of Mexico here near Texas, Louisiana. But we see this low here. And this is where we've seen a lot of them form, Colorado and Kansas on this model run. So maybe we're shifting the origin area of these storms a little further northward. And really, a lot of it's coming from the northwest or off the west coast, and they're kind of transferring over the Rockies as they oftentimes do, and then reforming over the plains. Regardless, we see a lot of wintry weather again for the Midwest and plains with this one. Some snowfall, and even the Rockies, some snowfall again. By Tuesday afternoon. By Wednesday afternoon, what we see is this low moves down into West Virginia and Virginia. It's important to note we're in the long range now, so don't take it too literally the specifics. It's more so just trying to pick up on trends by this point, but it's hard to deny that this is yet another storm that looks very similar to our previous like 4 or 5 we've seen on this model run. Northern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, southern New York, southern New England. In the heart of it, these areas could accumulate feet of snowfall if they really do see, 4 or 5 moderate to major snowstorms over a 2-week period, like we're seeing on this model run. We'll see the totals in a little bit, but I mean, it's just going to be crazy because of how many snow systems move over this area. It's just I can't remember a time like this. Maybe the February 2015 that we were talking about a couple days ago is the only one I can remember where there was numerous storms moving through in such a way. The cold kind of just continues in the east. We don't get any more systems here, but we do see a more of a positive PNA look with the colder air for the north central and northeast. And really, we're colder everywhere where you're seeing dipping. So we are seeing the dipping towards even the southeast. So really, you can pick up on the fact that the east is the colder point here. The west, a lot warmer. That's the overall look. We get some energy down here. We have some energy up to the north, but this one just doesn't connect around the 22nd. It wouldn't matter if it did or didn't because we're so far out, but just for those of you curious, there's another storm signal right here on this model. It's just not coming together. The GFS model, again, a lot of the snowfall is going to be a little bit further south, but surprisingly, just like yesterday, the Northeast doesn't really see much less because of it. It's more like just more areas see snowfall. So I think everybody's going to be more happy probably with what the GFS model shows, but either case is going to be very extreme. Saturday afternoon, again, we're starting out some snowfall for the Midwest, Great Lakes. As we move towards Sunday, that heavy snowfall again for New York and New England here, with our first snow event happening in just a couple of days. By Sunday, we're a little quieter. This is interesting. This is my neck of the woods. I've been watching the GFS model for a while now. Keeps showing a little bit of snowfall there for areas of southern Virginia, from southwestern all the way to southeastern Virginia. Would be curious. This is within 3 days, and this model is consistently showing this. Interesting. I know a few of you that live in my area kind of watch the channel, so I wanted to point that out for you guys, that this model is showing snowfall. I'm not too confident in this by any means, but it is interesting, and it's obviously possible. But something about this just gives me the impression that even if we see quite a bit of snowfall from this mini event, that it probably would have a hard time accumulating. I could be wrong, but it's been quite warm lately, so I think it's maybe an opportunity at some heavy flakes falling that just melt on the ground. But time shall tell, of course. The European model says no, of course, as well. Let's move towards Monday afternoon, and what we see is this second storm is kind of coming together. We see rain and snow respectively over the central states, and this is going to be our next kind of system here to be tracking. As we move towards Tuesday, we see this all kind of come together. Again, snowfall from my neck of the woods again on this model. Remember, I told you guys, everything's a little further south here. This one would be a little bit more major, and if it did include these southern areas, likely would lead to accumulation. But I believe what we're going to see happen is that this ridge is going to kind of grow, and we're going to see these areas switch over to rainfall at a certain point. So it would be a front-end snow event for these southern areas. Let's see what happens, though. Yeah, sure enough, we see that snow trend a little further north. Kentucky, southern Tennessee, or southern Ohio, areas of West Virginia, northern Virginia, Maryland, D.C., Delaware, southern New Jersey get the majority of the snowfall between the 11th and 12th there. Pretty heavy and pretty long-lived, and right after that's done, our next low is growing again right in that kind of area right here where we've been pointing out. Snowfall for areas of Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and Iowa. Thunderstorms and showers underneath for Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and Louisiana. And what we see by the time we're reaching towards Thursday is that this one moves up into the northeast. This is the same one on the European model that's more of a cutter, where we see some snowfall up in these northern areas, but again, the mid-Atlantic, hard to come by snowfall. Let's see if it moves offshore and gets some snowfall down there. I remember the European model, we saw things switch over to snowfall, but we don't see it quite as much on this GFS. Our next system kind of comes together here around the 15th, 16th. Again, this is the one that's pretty major on the European model and has been major for a while. Midwest Ohio Valley already getting snowfall by 7 p.m. on Saturday the 15th. Some mixed precipitation for areas like Virginia, Maryland, D.C., Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey occurring here by that point as well. As we move forward a couple of hours, we see this low is nowhere near as strong as the European model shows it, but we do get heavy snowfall regardless for the Ohio Valley, a lot of the mid-Atlantic and northeast, and there's a pretty thick area of mixed precipitation here throughout the heart of the mid-Atlantic. In this instance, strong thunderstorms underneath as well could be possible. I want to move it forward. I want to see if this gets stronger. Yeah, we get down to 996, which is a lot more intense than it was a minute ago, but still nowhere near the 960s like we saw on the European model. Regardless, we kind of end up with a heavier snowfall event, so it doesn't really matter in this case too much. It would have a lot less wind, and it would likely be less snowfall, but this still is able to pump out a major snowstorm with the 20, 30 millibar weaker storm. For Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, New England here, seeing a pretty intense system. And yeah, we kind of stay in the 990s with that one. So a little weaker, and we end up with the colder pattern. Again, the jet stream is following basically exactly what the European model was showing as well, with this trough in the east after the 15th, ridge in the west, which is going to help really to consistently bring the cold in the east here from this point forward. And then we see this system looks pretty intense. We see it originate here over areas in the northwest. And we see it kind of do this little swing around. Watch this. It's really fast too. Again, we're beyond 10 days out, so this is just kind of picking up on trends. This is not something to pay too much attention to the specifics at this point. But we see it swing from the Rockies through the Rockies, probably bringing quite a bit of snowfall down to the South Central, where Oklahoma, Arkansas, areas of Texas get snowfall. Even Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, they're getting some snowfalls. That one swings around. And then it ends up as a nor'easter. We're seeing this low form offshore of North Carolina. Again, snowfall throughout a lot of the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley here, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, DC, Maryland again, Northern Virginia again. The same areas getting hit once again for Thursday. Then that low is right offshore. We're seeing areas of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast getting heavy snowfall. And this is really the hefty one on this model, down to 982 over the Northeast with very cold air. Again, heavy snowfall, plenty of winds. This one isn't looking as windy as that European model storm did. Probably pretty windy, but I don't know if this one would be necessarily blizzard conditions in this case. And obviously way in the long range anyway, so it's hardly relevant. But just if anybody's curious. And that low just continues to drop over land, bringing less precipitation, but we do see it down to 977, 974 at certain points. So yeah, very strong low pressure system here, just about 5 days later than the European model. And we end off the model run like this. I mean, strong ridge in the west, large trough in the east, very, very cold look all the way to the end of the model run here on this GFS model. Now we've broken them both down. Let's take a look at the total precipitation. According to your European model, the west does phenomenal, the east does phenomenal, and it's going to be hard to find the areas that are below average for the most part. So let's take a look at it. And really, we're seeing highly above average precipitation for most of the west, also most of the east, and especially these areas where we're watching for potential snowfall. You know, you're looking at inches above average of liquid precipitation. Remember, you're 2 inches above average as far as precipitation here for these areas that are likely to get all snowfall. So keep in mind, most snowfall falls at least at 10-to-1 ratio. So you're looking at 20 inches of snowfall for that 2 extra inches of liquid precipitation, assuming it all falls as snowfall. And that's only the above average amount. That's not including your actual average amount that will already be included here. So lots and lots of precipitation, lots of that falling as snowfall, and that is going to lead to a whole lot of snowfall in a lot of these cases. So the European model, let's take a look at it. Very extreme out west, no surprise there. Very decent for areas of the plains, northern plains that is, some of the central plains as well. The Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley. I know that the Ohio Valley would be happy with this. I've seen a lot of y'all's comments. And then again, the Mid-Atlantic, especially the southern Mid-Atlantic, it's plowable in a lot of these areas, but it's not an extreme amount of snowfall. It's not something that's going to knock your socks off. That is going to be much more to the north on this European model, where we see states like Michigan, northern Ohio, northern Pennsylvania, New York, and then into northern New England, where they're getting the feet of snowfall. And we'll zoom in here just so you can take a look. But again, we're looking much more in line with 3, 4, 5, 6 inches in a lot of these areas. This mountain range in West Virginia, a lot of the Appalachian Mountains there tend to just get like double or triple what everybody else gets. So kind of excluding them. But these areas to the north is where we're seeing 2, 3, 4 feet of snowfall for states like northern Indiana, northern Ohio, a lot of Michigan, northern Pennsylvania, a lot of upstate New York, mostly western Massachusetts, almost the entire state of Vermont, New Hampshire, and then Maine, pretty much seeing a foot to 3 to 4 to 5 feet. So all over the place there, but just tons of snowfall, and it's coming as we're getting tons of precipitation. And again, this looks crazy, but you got to keep in mind, this model showed 5 or 6 moderate to major snowstorms hitting. So that's a whole lot of snow events. And if, you know, they average 6, 7, 8 inches of snowfall, that's when you start to get feet and feet and feet. I mean, just times it by 5 or 6, and you can see how we get to these amounts. Let's take a look at the GFS model, which I know a lot of people are going to be happier with. We do see that the Mountainous West does phenomenal on both models. No surprise there. Everything's a little further south. I mean, we see plowable amounts of snowfall for a lot of the plains, a lot of the Midwest, a lot of the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. Want to zoom into the east, though, because that's where the biggest difference lies, where, again, we'll compare. So look at the European model, and then here's the GFS model, and we see massive amounts from eastern Kentucky straight up into areas of West Virginia, Western Virginia, areas of Maryland, almost the entire state of Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, the entire state of New York, northern New Jersey, and then all of New England there seeing over 2 feet of snowfall. Basically, once you move into the pastels, that's where we're looking at 2 feet or more of snowfall. And when we look at these amounts, I mean, we're seeing a lot of 3 feet. We're seeing some 4 feet here. We're seeing many areas seeing multiple feet of snowfall throughout this entire area, which is encompassing a lot of the Mid-Atlantic and almost all of the Northeast. So I know that most people would prefer the GFS model. This is your 2 major models as of right now. Pretty big differences, especially as you move southward between getting, pretty small amounts to just extreme amounts for these southern areas of the Mid-Atlantic. Definitely going to be detrimental to see which one ends up being more correct. But the important thing to note is that we will be tracking, 3, 4, 5 major snow systems, or at least moderate to major snow systems coming up soon. That is continuing to be a fact, and that's going to be a lot of fun, and that's going to lead to a lot of potential snowfall, as you can see on screen here, for many different areas. I can't wait to track it with you guys. It looks very active. Now, the temperature pattern, again, the southeast ridge prevails a couple of days longer here for the rest of the 7th to the 8th, a little bit of the 9th for the southeast, and then the cold starts to move in for the 10th, Monday, Tuesday the 11th, Wednesday the 12th, Thursday the 13th. Again, the southeast ridge does make itself known occasionally here, but it doesn't last very long. When it does, we get the cold air moving back in. Southeast ridge, even colder air here around the 16th, 17th, 18th. That lasts for days. A little bit of a southeast ridge for the 19th, 20th, and then the colder air makes a comeback. So a lot of this is seeing one day of warmth followed by like 3 or 4 days of cold, and we kind of just revolve on that pattern, which is going to be a decent look. When we look at the West, this looks like a purely positive PNA by the end of the model run, which is huge because not only is this model showing continued cold moving into the East, but also the National Weather Service is showing something similar to this for that late February to early March timeframe. So if we get stuck in something like this, buckle up, because this is not going to be it. Everything we just looked at in this video would only be the beginning if this ends up being the case, which is crazy to think about. GFS models temperatures, let's just break it down as well. It's going to be pretty similar. We see the cold move in. The warm air kind of makes a comeback occasionally here for the East Coast. Then we get really cold for the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd. We get even colder on this model. And we're really just left with that very cold pattern all the way by the 23rd, with, again, warmer temperatures along the west, encouraging a positive PNA that brings that cold air towards the east. Both models in agreement that after the 20th, that positive PNA is going to make a huge comeback, and the colder air is going to get more and more extreme. So all of a sudden, I know we've had a warmer start to February, but if this model run and the European model run are both correct for that matter, I think we could make it all the way back to where basically February ends up being a colder than normal month for most of the central and eastern states, which would be crazy considering the start that we had. It would be a comeback story, but would be interesting. And for many folks, would basically lock in, I don't know how long it's been since we've had this, but a full December, January, and February where we had an average of below average temperatures for all 3 months. That would be absolutely insane. The winter is almost a lock to be below normal temperatures at this point, but for all 3 full months to be below normal would be just so incredibly rare. Definitely something that doesn't happen very often. Would be cool to see. With all that being said, we do upload every single day, so be sure to subscribe. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.